You're very welcome back to the show. Now, my next guest has suffered from a rare and embarrassing condition ever since she was a young girl. Trimethylaminuria, otherwise known as fish odour syndrome, is a condition which means your body is unable to break down certain compounds found in foods. And this results in the body disposing of these compounds in your sweat, in your breath, and your urine instead. Kelly Fidow-White, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thanks for having me on the show, Elaine.
Now, this is a condition that you kind of hear about. People joke about it like it's not a real thing. We've heard comedians talk about it, but this is something very real and tangible for your life. Tell us when you first realised you had an issue.
I've from being quite young, we've always noticed, my family's noticed, and I've noticed that I've got quite a strong body odour. But it would go through periods of being very strong and very unpleasant. And it took me a long while to figure out that it was actually a condition at all. To be honest, it's funny that you should mention comedians, because it was actually Billy Connolly that at first alerted me to this actually being a condition. It was one of his skits that alerted me to it, which is a bit of a weird way around. But I got my diagnosis when I was about 34, 35.
Wow, 34, 35. So you had decades of suffering with this and all the psychological damage that came with it. Did your parents know there was something wrong? Did they know there was something more than just basically a body odour issue? Was there any inkling that there was a medical condition going on?
I've got other medical conditions anyway. I've got a heart condition and a problem with my kidneys. So growing up, we thought, because the smell was predominantly coming out in my urine when I was a child, it was assumed to be something to do with my kidney condition. So it was never really sort of picked up on as anything other than either a side effect from that or just a strong body odor issue.
Yeah.
Until things got really quite, the complaints got sort of ramped up more and more, sort of in my early 30s.
Yeah.
And I decided to look into it myself and try and figure out what was going on.
When you're talking about complaints there, do you mean complaints in the workplace? Were these complaints you got all your life in school, in college, or did the problem get worse as you got older?
I think there's always been sort of complaints there. I remember sort of when I was late teens, I went away on an outward bound course, and there was comments made on that of, oh, you mustn't, when did you last shower? And it was like, well, this morning, same as everybody else. And there were comments made at school, with having the name Kelly. I never really thought much of it, of Smelly Kelly, just because it rhymes. But then the older I've got, the more I've sort of realised that it's, once I'd got into sort of working within a hospital environment, you're expected to be clean, and that's fair enough. But there were sort of complaints to my manager because people didn't feel comfortable coming directly to me because they didn't want to upset me.
So you work in a hospital in an enclosed setting as a radiographer, and when this happened with your work colleagues, it must have been hugely upsetting. Was it at that point then you said, listen, I actually have to find out what the hell is going on with me here. This isn't normal. This isn't right.
Yeah, I think it was because I'd got to a point where I was trying all the normal body odor fixes, but because it's not coming off your skin, it's coming through your skin. It's really counterintuitive as to how to deal with it. So everything that I was doing at the time was actually making the problem worse. So I was getting to a point where I was starting to almost think that I was going a little bit crazy, because I was showering, scrubbing, before I went to work, and almost as soon as I'd walked through the door, people that I'd teed up to be sort of allies, as it were sort of taking me to one side and saying, "Oh, Kelly, you're really strong today." And it's like, I've literally just got out of the shower before I've come to work. So it almost starts to mess with your sanity a little bit.
Yeah. And you mentioned there you heard Billy Connolly mentioning fish odor syndrome in one of his skits. That's actually how I heard of it first as well. I didn't realize it was a thing either. And that kind of rang a big bell in your head. So how did you get your diagnosis then? Did you have to approach the doctors and say, I think this could be it?
Yeah, I'd looked up online about it and found um, a, a website. The gentleman that runs the website had produced a lot of information, got a lot of people together, and he'd basically said, you know, you need to take this information to your GP because the chances are they won't have heard of it. It's that rare. They won't have heard of it. So take this with you, and speak to your GP about it if you think this is what you've got, which was what I did. My GP was really helpful, but unfortunately, they didn't know where to send me for the test or where to send the test off to. Um, so they referred me on to the genetics centre in Manchester, and it was from there. Even they weren't quite sure, so they had to look into it before they knew where to send the sample off to.
And when did you actually get your diagnosis?
It was around 2013, 2014.
And at that point, then, what did you do in relation to your life, in relation to your work? Was it a relief to you to have, this isn't me, I don't have a BO problem, I have a medical condition? Did you tell the people around you that this was the situation?
Yeah, to start off with, I was quite sort of cagey about it, I suppose, because I wanted to try and fix it first. Armed with the new information that I was armed with, but the problem just wasn't going away as quickly as I'd hoped it would. And in the end, I just wrote an email to my closest colleagues. And I was just basically upfront with them. They're all medical professionals. They all sort of understand about medical conditions. So once I'd opened up, to be honest, I think I've had one complaint since I've opened up to them. And it's been plain sailing ever since. Because I've got no sense of smell, I'm not sure whether I've still been having a problem or whether they've just been being really kind about it.
Yeah, yeah. But at least they know, and you know, and there's a relief in that in itself. How is there a treatment plan for you? How do you treat this? Is it curable?
Um, it isn't curable as such. I manage it the same way as a diabetic manages their condition, in the sense of there's a certain supplement regime that I use. I use a particular sort of body wash which keeps my skin pH a sort of an acidic level, which is the natural sort of level for your skin. I take sort of certain supplements, like I said, there's certain ones to adjust your gut microbiome,
Yeah,
which is where the majority of your TMA comes from.
yeah.
And there's all sorts of other ones that boost your body's ability to metabolize TMAU, because I've got the acquired sort as opposed to the genetic sort.
Yeah. So do they know what causes it, if the acquired sort, as opposed to being born with it genetically?
Um, they've got a fair idea. it tends to be when your body produces more TMA than it is capable of dealing with. Now, that can sometimes be, although you've not got a damaged gene, there are other genes that impact how that gene is expressed and how well that gene is expressed. So it affects how it affects your capability of metabolizing the TMA.
Yeah.
So if your gut's overproducing and your body's not able to produce enough, because I can imagine there's a lot of people out there whose gut overproduces but they never have a problem.
Yeah.
And that's because everything else is working right, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
so there's more than one factor at play here in your condition, really. Before I leave you go now, you're married to your husband, Michael. How does he deal with the condition? Does he notice the odour? Is it, or what way does your life work?
I have to say, Michael is absolutely amazing with it. When we first got together, and I didn't realise this until relatively recently, that he'd noticed it when we were first dating, but he never mentioned it, and he obviously loved me more than the smell put him off.
Yeah,
And you know that was a really lovely thing to find out.
yeah,
But he will tell me if he thinks there's something I can do about it. He'll tell me. If he doesn't, and we're sort of just on our way out to a night out, he'll just leave me be,
yeah.
and he'll let me enjoy my time out, as opposed to saying something and letting me get upset and not want to go anywhere.
Now, you're training to be a counsellor now. That, I suppose, you've been very mindful of people's hurt and people's psychological trauma because of your condition. Is that why?
Yeah, there was one of the young ladies that's on one of the groups that I'm in on Facebook. She's a trained counsellor and she's helped a lot of fellow sufferers. But she's not based in this country, and I realised that that there is a lack of specific psychological support, and it was something that I wanted to start working towards. That if I'm going to try and be a point of contact for people, I want to do it from a source of information rather than trying to help people and not have the right skills and tools to deal with it.
Yeah, well, Kelly, I have to say thank you very much for joining us on the show today. It's been a great education and talking to you, and best of luck for the future with your future plans.
Thank you very much, Elaine.
Now we'll take a break, but when we come back, what is happening with the plague of scam phone calls around at the moment? Well, Paul Delahunty from cybersecurity company Strive tells us what to do if you get one of these calls. You don't want to miss it.